My name is Tammy, and that's the screaming bird named Pickles. I will be right back. Okay, Pickles is on his tree. We will see how long that lasts before he drives me nuts. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Welcome to today's video. And it is time for the March recommendations for the 3 yearly challenges, other than my own, that I decided to participate in this year for sure. So, first up, we are going to do Jeanette's Christian Fiction Read Along, or Reading Challenge for 2025. And the March prompt is for a Christian fiction book set outside your home country. This is a little bit of a challenge. I live in the United States, and thus, almost everything on my shelf is set here. So, I did pull some books. And first up would be Of Love and Treason by Jamie Ogle. This is, I want to say it's more historical fiction than Christian fiction, but there is definitely faith in this book. I buddy read this with Amanda and Miriam. They both loved it far more than I did. And in general, this book has been very well received in the Christian fiction community. So your mileage may be better than mine. Okay, and then we come to Giver of Wonders by Rosanna M. White. I tried to read this in December for St. Nicholas Day, which is the 6th of December. And this is set in, Mira, right? And it is a story about St. Nicholas, and it was reading a little too young to me. I also could have been not in the mood for the book. So, but it is definitely Christian fiction. It definitely tells the story of St. Nicholas, and I would classify this as young adult. It starts off with a 12-year-old, and it was just reading way too young for me. So I will give it another try this December, and if it still doesn't work, then it can exit the facility, so to speak. Okay. Next up is another Rosanna M. White book. This one I loved. This is The Nature of a Lady by Rosanna, obviously. I buddy read this with Amanda last year, and I think in March, actually. And I absolutely loved it. I will read you the back of this one. In 1806. This takes place on an island out off the coast of England. Lady Elizabeth Libby Sinclair, with her love of microscopes and nature, isn't favored in society. She flees to the beautiful Isle of Sicily for summer and stumbles onto the dangerous secrets left behind by her holiday cottage's former occupant, also named Elizabeth, who mysteriously vanished. Oliver Tremaine, gentleman and clergyman, is determined to discover what happened to his sister, with the help of the girl now living in what should have been Beth's summer cottage, especially when he realizes it's the curious young lady he met briefly 2 years ago, who shares his love of botany and biology. But the hunt for his sister involves far more than nature walks, and he can't quite believe all the secrets Beth had been keeping from him. As Libby and Oliver work together, they uncover ancient legends, pirate wrecks, betrayal, and the most mysterious phenomenon of all, love. I truly loved this book, and Amanda and I tried to buddy read the second book in the series. Neither one of us were in the mood for it at the time, and Amanda was listening to the audio, and if I recall correctly, she said it wasn't the best audio. So I recommend the physical book versus audio. Okay, next up is a reliable set in England choice, and that is by Julie Klassen. All of her books are set in England. This is the Shadows of Swanford Abbey book. It is a standalone. I have not read it yet. I may be in the mood for it, to be honest. Agatha Christie meets Jane Austen in this atmospheric Regency tale brimming with mystery, intrigue, and romance. Other than the Jane Austen bit, I'm intrigued. So, this is high on my list of books I want to get to eventually, sometime soon. I say that and it gets shuttled aside constantly. Okay, the last two choices for Jeanette are Catholic fiction. The first takes place in France. That is The Diary of a Country Priest. And I recently read the back of this on my book haul video, which I will link down below. Same for the second book. And this one I know I'm reading. This one is set in Scotland. The World, the Flesh, and Father Smith. So there are two Catholic fiction choices for Jeanette's reading challenge. They are all set outside of my home country. So one of those would be a great choice for any of you. Okay, now for Anne's reading challenge in her, it's the Reading the Classics challenge, and the prompt for March is to read a children's book. And the scavenger hunt items for March are story centers around siblings, a mother in the story, and a pet is featured in the story. So, first up would be Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I didn't love it, but it does have a mother in the story, and there are siblings, and I know most of you love this book, so, and I did before I reread it. Obvious choice. And the book I'm supposed to be reading, according to my pile of possibilities, that would be Anne of the Island by L.M. Montgomery. This is book 3 in the Anne of Green Gables series. Anne does not have a sibling, and I will read you the back of this one. 18-year-old Anne Shirley is ready to leave her beloved Green Gables for university in nearby Nova Scotia. Awaiting her in the bustling Kingsport is Avonlea's Priscilla Grant. And soon, Anne has a new friend as well in the beautiful yet frivolous Philippa Gordon. Together, the girls take up residence in a charming old cottage called Patty's Place, where a stray named Rusty, the most forlorn specimen of a cat tribe they have ever beheld, steals Anne's heart. But building a life on her own isn't as easy as she had imagined. A tragedy back in Avonlea shatters Anne's carefree outlook, and an unwanted marriage proposal leaves her questioning her future. And then there's the handsome Gilbert Blythe. He has realized the depth of his feelings for her, but does she feel the same way? When a second tragedy is narrowly averted, Anne must decide if she's finally ready to love. So, while this is about an 18-year-old, a lot of us read the Anne series as wee things, so I'm putting it in here, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's particularly a children's book, but that is just me. So, okay. The one I am definitely reading for Anne's challenge is the 4th book in the series. Let me double check. Yes. And that is The Grey King by Susan D. Cooper. The series is the Darkest Rising sequence, and this fulfills a year for my Read My Life challenge, and this was first published in 1974, if I am remembering correctly. And it's the fourth book in the series. I highly recommend. They're not Christian fiction, but however, they are clean. There is no nonsense. They are fantasy. There is a definite good guy and bad guy in the series. I absolutely love them. I absolutely love this series. And I am not a big middle grade reader. So, they're like all middle grade, they're very fast. But if you have a middle grader who loves fantasy, this is a great series. And you don't have to worry about any of the characters or what's going on. This is just pure middle grade fantasy enjoyment. And this is the third book in the series. That is Wind in the Door by Madeline Lingle. And it's the book I'm on. And it's third book in the Wrinkle in Time series. Again, it's middle grade fantasy. This one was first published in 1973. So this would actually cross another year off for me. And it's a great choice for middle grade March, Anne's Reading Challenge, a Read Your Life. So check that one off. Okay, the last two. This was in my pile of possibilities. According to the inside flap, it says it was published in 2002, but I really have a feeling it is older than that. I really, really do. But I could be wrong. Anyway, that is The Victory Garden by Lee Kochenderfer. And I will read you the back. It is 1943, and everyone says the war will soon be over. World War II, that is. But Teresa Marks wonders when that day will come. Her older brother, Jeff, is fighting overseas, and Teresa worries about him, hoping he'll get home to Kansas safely. As a way of speeding Jeff's return, Teresa and her dad help the war effort by planting victory gardens. For 2 years, they've planted tomatoes, Jeff's favorite, and won taste testing duels with a curmudgeonly neighbor. But this spring, when the neighbor is hospitalized, Teresa rallies her friends to tend to his garden. She even considers using her secret for growing better tomatoes on her rival's plants. But her faith in secret weapons, in victory gardens, in people, and in life itself is shattered as the war rages on abroad and death strikes close to home. So, it's not technically a classic. However, it does take place in World War II. So, and there is even a map to help middle grade readers. So it is definitely appropriate for middle grade March. And it is on my pile of possibilities. So I will let you know if I get it read, how it was. And last up is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This is my copy I've had for almost my entire life. Much like myself, it is a classic, and it's full of beautiful illustrations. And it does not sit on my bookshelf because I want it to, stand the test of time. I don't know who I will who will get it upon my death, but it's one of those things you have to consider when you don't have kids of your own. So, okay. Those are my recommendations for Anne's March prompt. Up next would be Amanda's. And Amanda's prompt is Southern Root. Read a multi-generational book. And I know Amanda is doing a video for her prompt, and I have a huge, wide variety of books to share that I think fulfill this prompt beautifully and are definitely a multi-generational, like, you can use. And the Anne of Green Gables series for this prompt. Little Women fits for this prompt, but those are not the ones I've chosen for this prompt. I instead have grabbed a stack. It's a stack of books I have read, books I want to read, books I am in the process of reading the series, and so you'll see where I am at the series, but all of these books would be fantastic reads for this prompt. And yeah. So first up would be Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. It is book number 2. I just said that. This is, believe it or not, a mass market paperback. I know I rarely ever read mass markets, but I picked these up while we were still in the RV, and they just weigh less. Thus, when weight is a consideration, you tend to buy mass markets. Do I think I'm going to get that book read for Amanda's challenge? Probably not. Am I going to try? Possibly. I'm not sure when this video is coming out, but my pile of possibilities, it is not on there. But I also said that in an edit, my pile of possibilities is really a pile this month. It's just potential. It is not, I'm not holding myself to it. Next up would be American Duchess by Karen Harper. I have read this one. Buddy read this with the wonderful Lou last year. This is the story of Consuela Vanderbilt. It is under 350 pages. It's exactly 350 pages. And Consuelo and her mother and the saga they go through is definitely a multi-generational story. It is beautifully written, like all Karen Harper books, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you are even remotely interested in the Gilded Age or the Vanderbilt family or the $1 million heiress trend that went through late 1890, early 1900s, British and American society, as American heiresses were married off to British aristocracy to put money into those families. This is a great book. No hesitation in picking that up. And apparently our Mare Lady is lost. Okay, now for the pick I am probably reading for this prompt myself. That is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Bachman, and I will read you the back. I have not read anything by Bachman, by the way, and I've heard he's fantastic, so this was a library find, and I'm looking forward to it. Elsa is 7 years old and different. Her grandmother is 77 years old and crazy. As in, standing on the balcony firing paintball guns at strangers crazy. She is also Elsa's best and only friend. At night, Elsa takes refuge in her grandmother's stories in the land of Almost Awake and the kingdom of Mimas, where everybody is different and nobody needs to be normal. When Elsa's grandmother dies and leaves behind a series of letters apologizing to people she has wronged, Elsa's greatest adventure begins. Her grandmother's instructions lead her to an apartment building full of misfits, monsters, attack dogs, and old crones, but also to the truth about fairy tales and kingdoms and a grandmother like no other. a grandmother, a granddaughter, black lab on the cover, comedy. I'm very hopeful about this book. I'm very hopeful about this book. Okay, next up would be a book club read. And this discussion is still available on Discord, so if you are interested and you're interested in the discussion, please feel free to go back and read and join in if you have comments. That is Ice One by Janelle Soslinski. This is a standalone. It is historical fiction. It is set in Paris and just after World War I, and the mothers in here are a study in contrast and definitely make this a multi-generational book. And if you like ballet, if you like Scotland, if you prefer World War I stories, it was a fantastic read. I absolutely loved every word of that book. I really, really did. Next up is I Must Betray You. Also a book club read last year. This is set in Romania at the Velvet Revolution at Christmas in 1989. The grandfather and grandson in this story will break your heart. This book will break your heart. This book will make you angry. This book will... It's just fantastic. It's by Ruta Sepetys. I want to read her entire backlist. And yeah, I highly recommend this book. The conversations on Discord for book chat were fantastic. Okay. Next up, our first ever book club read. Veiled in Smoke by Jocelyn Green. This is not available on Discord. We were using a different app at the time, so unfortunately those conversations are lost. This is Christian historical fiction. It is the first in the series, and Amanda and I both recently DNF'd book 2. However, this book is fantastic, as you can see. I did some annotating in here. If you like a mystery, this is set in Chicago. The book opens up right before the Great Fire in Chicago. You learn about Civil War. You learn about insane asylums at the time in America. It's just a fantastic book. I cannot recommend it enough. Okay. This isn't going to be a surprise to anyone. Catholic Fiction in Pieces by Rhonda Ortiz. This is the first book of the Molly Chase series. It is one of my favorite books of all time. It is historical fiction set in 1793 Boston, and Molly has lost both of her parents tragically, and she moves in with a family friend, Mrs. Robb, and it is definitely a multi-generational story because Mrs. Robb begins to impart her wisdom that Molly never learned from her mother to Molly herself, and the entire series is fantastic. It is one contiguous story. So where book 1 leaves off, book 2 picks up. And at the time of filming this video, Rhonda's in the process of finishing up book 3 with a March 5th deadline to get it submitted to her publisher. So if you could say a prayer that Rhonda finishes that up so that it meets its publishing schedule, Rhonda would greatly appreciate it. And I would greatly appreciate it because I want book 3 so badly. So, yeah, say a quick prayer for Rhonda. Okay. 2 more to go. I could have picked any of his books for this. All of his books tell multi-generational stories, but I picked The Logger Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stahl because this is the first one I grabbed. This was published in 2019, and I believe this was his debut book. I'm not sure. Doesn't list any others, so I will read you the inside flap. 2 sisters, 1 farm. A family is split when their father leaves their shared inheritance to Helen, his younger daughter. Despite baking award-winning pies at the local nursing home, her older sister, Edith, struggles to make what most people would call a living. She can't help wondering what her life would have been like with even a portion of the farm money her sister kept for herself. With the proceeds from the farm, Helen builds one of the most successful light breweries in the country and makes their company motto ubiquitous. Drink lots, it's blots. Where Edith has a heart as big as Minnesota, Helen's is as rigid as a steel keg. Yet one day, Helen will find she needs some help herself, and she could find a potential savior close to home, if it's not too late. Meanwhile, Edith's granddaughter, Diana, grows up knowing that the real world requires a tougher constitution than her grandmother possesses. She earns a shot at learning the IPA business from the ground up. Will that change their fortunes forever and perhaps reunite her splintered family? Here we meet a cast of lovable, funny, and quintessentially American characters eager to make their mark in the world that's often stacked against them. In this deeply affecting family saga, resolution can take generations, but when it finally comes, we're surprised, moved, and delighted. Every book I have read from him, I have fallen in love with. There's one book I haven't yet read, and I will. But I'm sorry, this is not his debut novel. That would probably be Kitchens of the Great Midwest, which I also greatly recommend as a family saga. His books all take place in Minnesota, and they're fantastic. And it isn't someplace that often shows up in books. Okay. And last up, as I try to put the just jacket back on, just one example from my shelf out of the 4 or 5 books I own by him. That would be Rebels of Ireland by Edward Rutherford. Every Rutherford book is a multi-generational story. The book opens up, whatever time he picks, the book opens up, and you begin to follow ancestral lines through history in each chapter at key moments in history. And if you are a historical fiction junkie like I am, they are fantastic. He has one, the Dublin Saga is the Princes of Ireland and the Rebels of Ireland. He has a book on London. He has a book on New York, Paris, China, Russia. There's 2 more Rutherfords on England on my shelf. Everything he writes is very well researched. It is fantastic. You meet characters of history, but they are not the focus of the book by any stretch of the imagination. I cannot, and I stress, I cannot recommend them enough. Okay, those are my March reading challenge recommendations. What are you reading for your reading challenge recommendations? Leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.